Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. In this episode, I'll be teaching you how to play a brilliant game thought to have originated in India. This is the game chess. Okay, so let's start off with the game setup first. Chess is played on an 8x8 board. Each team has 16 pieces in total. So, Team A and Team B. Team A, you can see the entire front row is the exact same piece. These pieces are referred to as pawns, and each team has 8 pawns in total. Now, if we look at the back row, going from left to right, let's start off with the first piece. This is the rook, or a castle. And the rook and castle, there's 2 of them on each corner. If we go one inward, we then get another piece called the knight. These are considered one of the most powerful pieces in the game. If we go one more inward, you have bishops. These are also very powerful in the game of chess. And finally, the last 2 pieces are the king and the queen. Like I mentioned, the king is the biggest piece on the game, often marked with the cross. The queen, on the other hand, is indeed the most valuable piece in this game. She is the one who will, often at times, protect the king. Okay, so now that we've covered the setup, let's look at how each piece moves. And it's important to know in the game of chess, each piece moves in a unique way. So let's start off with the pawn. In the game of chess, the pawn can move in the opening move up to 2 spaces forward. So pawns can only move forward. If you look at the board now, you can see if I wanted to move this pawn, in the beginning, I can move it either 1 square forward or 2 squares forward. So that goes with all of these pawns here. If I wanted to move this one, I could move it 1 or 2 forward. Same thing with this one, 1 or 2 forward. Next up, we have the rook, or what some people like to call it, the castle. So let's put the rook back on that same square. The rook moves in a vertical or horizontal manner. It can move as many squares as you want it to move. So in this case, the rook could move forward 1 or 2 spaces. It could move backwards. It could move horizontally as many spaces as you want. Next, we have the mighty horse, more formally known as the knight. The knight, let's put it on the same square. Let's see how it moves. So in general, the knight moves in an L-shaped manner. So for example, the knight would move 2 spaces, either horizontally or vertically, and then 1 space in the other direction. So let's just look at it again. If it moved 2 spaces horizontally, then it would move 1 space vertically. It could go forward or it could go backwards. This way it could go 2 spaces horizontally, and then it would go 1 space forward or 1 space backwards. The knight is very important because it's the only piece that can jump over other pieces. So if this knight is back here, it can jump over this pawn and then move. Other pieces, they can't do that. Next, we have the almighty bishop. So once again, imagine we have the bishop on this square right over here. The bishop moves in an X-like manner, so diagonally. The bishop can move as many spaces as you want diagonally. So if it was here, I can move right here. I can move right there if I wanted to. Or I could go diagonally this way. I could go diagonally backwards. There are many options that the bishop can do. Next, we got the queen. Like I mentioned earlier, the queen is the most important piece in the game. You do not want to lose this piece early on. Once again, let's put the queen on the same square. This queen can move like the bishop, diagonally, or it can move like the rook, in a forwards, backwards, left to right manner. So the queen is essentially the bishop and the rook combined. It can move as many spaces as you want it to. It can go upwards this way, it can come backwards, it can go left, it can go right, it can go diagonally. And lastly, we have the king. The king is the most important piece of the game because if it falls in the game of chess, the match is over. The king, like the queen, can move in any direction you want it to. However, there is one limitation, and that limitation is the king can only move one square. So it can move one square forward, one square backwards, one square to either side, or one square diagonally. The game of chess starts with Team White going first, and then turns alternate. So Team White takes a turn, Team Black takes a turn, and for each turn you can only move one piece at a time. So in this case, let's say I moved this pawn 2 spaces forward. Then it's Team Black's turn. Team Black can move any piece that they want. However, it's important to know, this rook, for example, it can't jump past people. This bishop can't jump past people. So often at times the game starts with the pawns being moved first, or you can move the knight. The knight can jump past people. So the knight can come 1, 2 forward and then 1 sideways. So let's say this player moved the knight there. Then it's my turn again. I can now bring this queen outwards because there's a lane open for her. And she could come here, 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 or I could just move another pawn, like that. So as the game progresses, each player takes a turn, one by one, and let's just look at this scenario for example. Imagine Team Black moves their pawn 2 pieces forward, and they make a rookie mistake. Now, how to capture your opponent's pieces. We mentioned that the pawns only move forward. So this pawn, yes, it can move forward. But imagine instead, I want to eat this pawn, I want to capture it, I want to take it in my bag and take it home. In order to capture opponent's pieces, the pawns in specific, they can move diagonally to capture an opponent's piece. So once again, this pawn was here. It can move diagonally 1 space. I can capture this piece, and now it's off the board. It's eliminated from the game. Now Team Black, his queen, if he wanted to, or if they wanted to, they could come out and they could capture my pawn. And now my pawn's off the board. So like that, the game goes 1 turn at a time. So as the game progresses, like I said, each team takes a turn. I could move this knight up. Maybe this black piece might move his pawn up. I can move my knight here. They can move their pawn up. So like that, the game goes on and on and on until finally you get close enough to capture the king. So after a couple of turns, as you can see, I've just completely eliminated the other team's pieces. Now I'm going to show you how to capture that king. So we have this king over here. I have my rook here, and I want to capture it, I want to eat it. So let's say I moved my rook 1 piece over, and now my rook is directly looking at that king, ready to take it over. This is what you call check. The king is under check from this rook. When the king is under check, it must move to save itself. There is no other option of play. The king must move, or if the opponent had another piece, like the queen for example, that queen can come and block the path of the rook to protect its king. But in this case, this player doesn't have a queen, so they have to move their king. So for example, let's say they move their king this way, in the corner. Now, I want to capture it again, so I can move my rook a little bit closer. Now finally, how do you finish this game? How do you checkmate that king and claim victory in the game of chess? Let me show you. So we have this queen over here. Imagine we put it right beside the king. This king, like I mentioned earlier, is under check. It must move. It needs to get away from that queen. It can move forward, but no, it can't because it would still be under check. The king needs to move to a place where it's no longer under check, no longer in threat. So it can't move forward because the queen is still putting it in check. If it moves diagonally in front of the queen, it can't do that either because the queen still has it under check. What if it tried to eat the queen? No, it can't do that either because this rook this rook is still threatening that king. So at this point, the king has no options. It can't move forward. It definitely can't move off the board. It can't move diagonal, and it can eat the queen. At that point, I would say to my opponent, checkmate. So to conclude this video, the game of chess is an awesome game. You can play with your friends, you can play with your family. It's great during these unprecedented times, and you can also play online with computers or with your friends. This game requires a lot of planning, a lot of strategy. It is actually a really, really fun game. Once you get the hang of it, you'll really enjoy it, and I think it's just fabulous. So thank you for watching this episode of How to Play Chess. If you have any other questions, feel free to put it on the comment section below.